we have a question before us. We say you push a 24 kg bus horizontally across a warehouse with 66 Newton of applied force. There is 45 Newton of friction acting on the sled. Determine the acceleration. So we have the mass as 24 kg. Then we have the normal force is 66 Newton. Then we have frictional force 45 Newton. Acceleration is unknown. Now, having gotten all these parameters written out, let's assume this is the bus, or this is the sled, the bus rather. Now, the mass of the bus is 24 kg. Now, you are pushing the bus with a force of 66 Newton across. There's a frictional force acting on it in an opposite direction. Now, what is frictional force? Frictional force acts against the normal force. So, therefore, the frictional force is acting in opposite direction, which is 45 Newton. So, our resultant force will be equal to, now the resultant force, that means the total force, the net force acting on this will be equal to the force minus the frictional force. It's equal to the force minus the frictional force. Reason being that they travel in opposite direction, and you pretty know that when vectors travel in opposite direction, what happens to them? You subtract them. So our force, or we can say our net force, F net, is equal to, we have 66 Newton minus 45 Newton. 66 Newton minus 45 Newton will give us, this will give us 21 Newton. So therefore, the net force acting on it is equal to 21 Newton. Now to get the acceleration is the net force is equal to the mass times acceleration. Net force is mass times acceleration. Now, mass, to get acceleration, what do? Divide both sides by m. So divide both sides by m. And our A is F net over m. What is your the net force? The net force is 21 Newton. So we have 21 Newton divided by, what is the mass? The mass is 24 kg. So our acceleration will be equal to 21 divided by 24. That will give us 0.875. 0.875 meters per second square. That is the unit for acceleration. So that is pretty much it for this question. Whenever vectors are traveling, since force is a vector quantity, whenever vectors are traveling in opposite direction, what do? You subtract them to get the resultant vector. In a linear, since there is no angle inclined at, so in a linear motion, whenever the vectors are traveling in opposite direction, you subtract them. They are traveling in the same direction. What do? You add them together to get the resultant vector. Since force is a vector quantity, that principle also applies here. So what you do is, since they are traveling in opposite direction, you subtract them, which is 66 minus 45, it gives you 21 Newton, and when you simplify, you get your final answer.